Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for FACCC 2627 State Budget Webinar, a follow-up to our May revision webinar. In this presentation specifically, we're going to walk through what the June 15 budget package means for California Community College faculty, what remains unresolved, and where FACCC advocacy continues from here. I'm Jason Henderson, the Governmental Relations Specialist with FACCC. I'm joined by Stephanie Goldman, FACCC Executive Director, as well as Sarah Thompson, FACCC President. And so we will start the overall budget process. We'll start there. Then we'll move into major community college investments, FACCC budget priorities, and finally, some legislative items that have been moving this year. But before we get into numbers and details, we just wanted to ground the conversation here in FACCC's mission to inform, educate, empower, and advocate for faculty and service to students and the communities of California. That mission matters because in the budget context, the state budget is not just a list of programs or dollar amounts. It's one of the main ways California decides what its values are and what it's willing to sustain. And so for FACCC, the budget framing, and advocacy is quite clear. Faculty working conditions are student learning conditions, as you all know. So when we talk about things like COLA, SCFF, part-time leave, part-time office hours, part-time healthcare insurance, we're talking about conditions that allow faculty to teach and support students, maintain high quality instruction across the system. And so with that, I will turn it over to Stephanie to walk us through where we are in the state budget process. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I know many of you here have heard my spiel about this many, many times over the past many years, actually. But it is June 17th. That means that the budget was done before midnight by June 15th. The June 15th is actually a constitutional deadline. The reason that constitutional deadline exists is I think we all remember not so long ago, not at least on my heart, we had so many summers where they just could not get the budget done and they couldn't get it done on time. Now they get it done by June 15th because they don't want to lose any pay. However, it has changed the process a little bit. Instead of having a complete budget done by June 15th, typically what we get is a plan from the Senate, a plan from the Assembly. They put it into a budget vehicle. Every other year it switches off on who carries the budget vehicle. This year it's AB 109, so it's an Assembly bill. Next year it'll be a Senate bill. And they send it off to the governor. The governor has until June 30th to actually sign this. But does this mean that negotiations are over or that we are done with our budget advocacy? Absolutely not. June 15th is a major deadline. It's when we see the bulk of the money in there, but there are so many logistics that need to be worked out well, frankly, over the summer. So we'll see Budget Bill Juniors, you may see a lot of conversation or talk, especially on Cal Matters and EdSource and some of those other news sources about trailer bill language. And that's sort of when we and other stakeholders really, really get involved with what the budget language is actually going to say.
Thanks, Stephanie. So to understand the June 15th budget package, we first have to look at the revenue and the Prop 98 picture. So compared to Governor's May revision, if you all remember from our last webinar, legislative assumptions projected roughly around $5 billion for the general fund in the May revision. That improved revenue picture translates into roughly $2 billion additional for Prop 98 funding. That's for K through 14 education, K through 12 plus community colleges. So, but even with that improvement, Prop 98 still remains one of the central points of budget tensions this year. You might have heard again on all these news outlets what's going down, EdSource being one of them. The main issue here is that $3.9 billion, as we call it, the Prop 98 settle up, is still unresolved. So what this means is there's still debates on simply not whether the money is owed, but currently when it will be paid out, how it will be scheduled, and how the state balances that obligation to its schools and its community colleges. So that's why the budget can be complicated and why we're having this webinar. It's to sort of sift through these things and give you a perspective of how this affects your colleges and your districts. So while there is more revenue than expected compared to May, there's still significant dispute over the timing and the treatment of the Prop 98. So there are three major pieces to the Prop 98 issue. It's the settle up, the TK split, and as well as the COLA. So the first is the settle up. the governor proposed delaying the distribution of that $3.9 billion. And that's what the tension is about, the scheduling of that, until the revenues materialize. And so the legislature appears to accept the general concept of the delayed funding, but they're still seeking more detail and more reliable sort of a payment schedule for that. I think this distinction matters significantly because FAC and other stakeholders, we voiced our concerns not only with the total amount of funding, but whether that funding will actually become available in a way to support obviously colleges, faculty, and students. And then Prop 98, for those who don't know, is the state's unpaid balance to the schools and community colleges. The second piece here is the TK split. And so historically, the TK split is about 89% to TK 12 and 11% to community colleges. But what this means is that the legislature will restore the transitional kindergarten back to the TK side of the Prop 98 split. And so that's around $241 million back to the community colleges. And the last piece here is the $438 million for a 4.31% COLA to the apportionments. And so I think the broader takeaway from all this is that the Prop 98 remains strong overall, but the how and the mechanics, they really matter. The timing, the repayments, and the splits, 1% is a lot. So as Stephanie mentioned, AB 109 is our budget bill this year. It's the main budget vehicle, obviously, and that will become then the Budget Act, and that's what appropriates the funding for the upcoming fiscal year starting on July 1st. And so what does 109 mean for community colleges? Again, I think there's three takeaways here. We just touched on one of them. It restores $241 million back to the community colleges. It provides 13.21 million in additional enrollment growth funding. And so that would be supported by or supports a 3.5% enrollment growth compared to the 1.5% in the May revision. And then the $438 million for a 4.31% COLA. So this is not the end of the story. Again, as Stephanie mentioned, the final impact still depends on trailer bill language, budget bill juniors, implementation guidance, obviously faculty advocacy. So Stephanie, I'll hand it back to you to walk us through particulars in each spending plan.
All right, so this is a little bit in the weeds, but I know I have some budget wonks on here, and I also have I know there are a number of people who are going into negotiations for next year and just want to know what's going on. So we have basically, the Assembly came out with one plan, the Senate came out with another plan, and both of them are very, very similar. So when I say we're getting into the weeds, we're really getting into the weeds. For the most part, they really did back the May revise, but as Jason kind of mentioned, as he alluded to, one of the bigger differences between their plans, the Ledge Analyst's Office and the May revise, is frankly, the legislature for once wants to play with more money than the governor's office, which is quite unusual, actually. Over the past couple of years, it was typically the governor who tended to have these more aggressive budget estimates, but this year it's the legislature, which is interesting. So one of FACC's biggest pushes this year, as well as last year, and going into the future, is this COLA for schools or districts that are on the student-centered funding formula. We argue that every single district should be getting a COLA because frankly, the cost of living is increasing for every single district, regardless of whether or not you're on this student-centered funding formula or if you're on hold harmless. The Assembly from day one was pretty honest with us in saying that they were not going to go through with that and they were not to be supportive of it. We did continue pushing, but you can see in this plan, they really are just focusing on those that are on the student-centered funding formula. There was an additional COLA adjustment you can see for 197.7 million. And then I want you to look at enrollment growth because this is something that's really been a big focus, in particular for legislators in the South. They really are pushing to fund those colleges that are showing a growth in enrollment. Now we know that there are ways that districts can, play with accounting to make it look like they're growing more than others. So it's interesting that they're pushing forward with that much of growth. Calbright, they're looking at a $38.1 million increase in ongoing, as well as Common Cloud Platform, $41 million, and then deferred maintenance. The deferred maintenance is kind of interesting. We'll see year after year after year where there's no money for deferred maintenance, and then you'll get a year like this where the economy is doing quite well. And they will put a pretty decent investment into the deferred maintenance. So that's at 120 million. And then there's 37 million for credit for prior learning, and we do have a 2.87% categorical COLA. You'll notice on the Senate side, they push for a little bit higher of a categorical COLA. And then the pregnancy disability leave, which I'll get to in a couple more slides, has been a huge conversation. I won't keep you on the edge of your seat. One of the things that we've been in conversations with is trying to get that extra super COLA percentage provided to all districts, regardless of whether or not they're on the SCIF. There has been some interest in it, but it hasn't gotten the real traction, even with the backing of some districts. And then as far as the one-time going, there's a deferral repayment for the student-centered funding formula. LGBTQ resource centers are going to see another $30 million come through. Dream Resource Centers, $100 million. Frankly, that's in response to what we're seeing at the federal level. A lot of these policies decisions are kind of driven by folks who are pretty angry about what we're seeing federally. And then we've got the Student Support Block Grant, which is supported by pretty much everybody, both inside and around the building at 117 million. Next slide. And then this is the Senate plan. It's a little bit, I don't want to say simpler, but it's, they didn't kick it quite as hard on the higher education. One of the biggest conversations we've been having is over that transitional kindergarten adjustment. Now, if you came to our budget webinars last year, we talked a lot about how the governor wanted to shift all of this money from the community college side to the TK side. And over the summer, we negotiated a deal where basically some would go over that, but it was in a way that would have less impact on our colleges. Now there's been kind of this reversal where we're going to be seeing that money come back to the community colleges. So the colleges should be in a little bit of a better position. And, we are seeing that movement for TK to actually be treated like it is, in fact, on the K-12 side of that Prop 98 split. So that's a big deal. And it is a huge advantage for our schools. Again, we've got a lot of funding going to our Dream Resource Centers, our LGBTQ centers, the Student Equity and Achievement Program, COLA. You can see it, they're going a little bit higher with that. And then a financial aid administration support. That's really interesting. We don't see it. It's not very often that the financial aid administration side gets money. They always ask for money. They've got their own association that's always pushing for it. But it's pretty rare for them to get, additional funding. So that should help our friends in the financial aid office. But it's good to see. So next slide, please. And then the final legislative package, because ultimately, when you're talking about the state budget, at the end of the day, the three people that matter the most are the governor, the pro tem, and the speaker. So they do have to come, to an agreement. As we mentioned 100 times and we'll continue mentioning, this is not a final agreement. This is what they got passed, and we still have to figure out the details. But ultimately, the attitudes are towards higher enrollment growth funding, that 4.31% COLA apportionment, that's super COLA. The TK split, restoring funding to the community colleges, greater investments on Dreamer and LGBTQ resource centers, student support block grant funding, and then this just what they call investment in student success infrastructure. Whether or not these additional cloud programs and others lead to student success, it's to be seen, but that is how they package it. And then, of course, increased support for vulnerable student populations. Again, California generally comes out pretty strong. We saw this before during the last time Trump was president. We like to be on the front lines of fighting, and that, say what you want for California, but we put our money where our mouth is when it comes to our vulnerable student populations. And then this is, of course, one of FACC's biggest issues that we've been pushing on since at least 2019. That was the first time I got to work on a bill related to this. We probably were working on it beforehand as well, but paid pregnancy disability leave. So this was included in the May revise. For many, many years, we have sponsored or co-sponsored bills trying to get paid pregnancy leave for our faculty. But Governor Newsom has always vetoed them on the grounds that we don't have the money in the budget. This year, notably his last year as governor, right before he's set to do a presidential run, he has decided that we do indeed have money in the budget for pregnancy disability leave. What makes this system a little bit unfair is the COLA that's supposed to cover it is again only going to those districts on the student-centered funding formula. So if you're hold harmless or stability, you're not, or basic aid, you're not going to see that discretionary COLA to help cover that. Now, does that mean that faculty aren't getting pregnant at those colleges? Absolutely not. It just means those colleges now have to eat that cost. Um, some more details have come out. It's going to be based on AB 65, which I think was heard in hearing today or tomorrow, Jason.
Yeah, it was today. Senate
Today. Perfect.
unanimously passed. So
Yes. So AB 65 is the policy side for the paid pregnancy disability leave. We're co-sponsors. I believe CCA or CTA are the primary sponsors. CFTs on it. A number of organizations are in support of this. And that's helped with some of the details going forth. But what we are looking at is 14 weeks of paid pregnancy disability leave. Doesn't matter how long faculty member has been at their college or their K-12. It applies to almost all employees. It's full pay, health coverage must be maintained. Um, and then ultimately, we're going to see what it looks like when it actually goes into effect. As far as we can tell, it would be take place immediately on July 1st. I will say there have been some organizations that were pushing to have it start on January 1st, but I hadn't heard of that getting any actual traction, so we do anticipate that starting on July 1st. So what's next? From now, mid to late June, we're going to see a lot of governor and legislative leaders negotiate remaining issues. We're sending out our budget letter. We've signed on to a number of other budget letters, what we call NASCAR letters that are focused on just one issue or another. For example, there's one about paid pregnancy leave, and there's another one that pushes to have TK on that K-12 side of the split so our colleges are fully funded. The budget trailer bills and budget bill juniors will be finalized. I say that with a caveat that we say this every year, and then somehow in July, when the legislators are on summer recess, we tend to be in conversations with the staffers in the Capitol about the actual details. So hopefully they'll be finalized. And then, of course, the governor has until the end of the month to act on the final budget package. I think this is a budget package he's going to be very proud of. It's a very, very good budget year for education specifically, just because of AI and the AI bubble we're living in. So he is going out on a high for him. But there are a number of other outstanding questions. Is the final resolution of that $3.9 billion Proposition 88 settle up? Final enrollment funding levels. Ongoing versus one-time investments is always a huge conversation. In Sacramento, they try to make as much as they can one-time funding because we're so reliant on tech and all of these other things that it's hard for us to track from year to year what the year is actually going to look like. For example, we thought this was going to be a terrible year for the budget, and it ended up not bad at all. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the final trailer bill language. Keep an eye on the weekly. That's where we will send updates on what's going on as we move forward.
I think we'll give it over to Sarah now to walk us through student-centered funding formula, what we've been talking with stakeholders as well as legislative members. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks. So as we look into the upcoming year, next year's we are pretty solid in understanding which districts next year will be, on the SCIF or on stability or hold harmless funding. Definitely know which districts were on it this year. And the reason it's important to look at the final numbers and know which districts were on it this year is that, of course, the funding formula treats districts that are on SCIF and stability differently than it treats those that are hold harmless. And this year, particularly since the COLA is so large and because the maternity leave is attached to that COLA, that hold harmless districts are not going to see their funding floor increased with next year's COLA. And it's important to really envision this as a long-term harm to these districts, because that means that additional 4.5% is going to be an ongoing loss. And so therefore there's not going to be any quote catch up period where these districts are going to be able to pull funding from other areas, like, oh, even if they somehow manage, right, to become funded again on the SCIF or become funded again on stability, they will have lost that, this opportunity for this COLA for this year, for forever, essentially. So, and those districts, of course, that are impacted, and right now we see that there are 16 districts that are classified as being on hold harmless this year, 3 of which are basic aid districts, which don't get their funding from the state anyway. So basically 13 districts that are going to not be attributed, right, that the COLA for the upcoming year. And of course that's leading to greater, fiscal chaos within their systems, leading to layoffs, class cuts, service restrictions, etc. The one thing that should help float some of these districts may be that at least their categorical funds are coming with COLAs. So there might be a way of moving some money around to protect from the most dire consequences, right, of not getting that COLA, but it's still going to be a hardship nonetheless. The problem with excessive reserves as a consequence of the SCIF, of, being a SCIF winner, or, getting the COLA when you already have, right, very large reserves, still has not been addressed, is still not really factoring into conversations, except, when we bring it up. We are expecting that the excessive reserves audit that we got passed last summer will be coming out sometime in the very near future. And so hopefully that will sort of bring that spotlight back onto the problem of a funding model that creates princes and paupers, right, out of different districts. Attaching the maternity leave again to the COLA, the COLA of the SCIF, means that hold harmless districts and basic aid districts will not be given that COLA. So essentially, these districts will have an unfunded mandate because the law will go into effect, but the funding for them, as it stands, if nothing changes in the next couple of weeks, will not be there for them to access. We're remaining pretty diligent in our advocacy for more equitable funding model. We are currently, our primary push right now is trailer bill language to try and get a system-wide work group together to replace the SCIF formula with another funding model. We are talking to system partners. There is interest. It's just a matter of, timing and then a taste for it once we get our partners to hopefully sign on. So when we look at our budget advocacy outcomes for this year, getting a COLA, of this size is a tremendous coup. And other departments within the government, Health and Human Services, et cetera, all right, are actually looking at us with incredible envy. We understand that it's not equitably distributed, but from the outside, it looks like, right, that we are definite winners from this year's budget. Getting the student support block grant is tremendous because that will be divided up basically by FTES across the state. And that will be unrestricted, which means that districts can use that money in the areas that need the support the most. And so that will help even the hold harmless districts stay afloat in certain areas a little longer. And again, I mean, even though we're identifying problems with it, getting the paid pregnancy disability leave has been such a tremendous coup for our system and for the K through 12 system. This has been biggest uh, gender discrimination that has been in a system that advocates for gender equality, and so that this has finally been addressed, finally been remedied. We can really celebrate. We can really celebrate about that. On to you, Jason.
Thanks, Sarah. So now we'll switch over to our legislative updates. So right now, obviously, we still have both the budget processes and the policy process going on at the same time. So currently, right now, we're in the middle of June, still focused on the budget, trailer bills, budget bills, and all that. Moving into July, it'll be the last day for the second House policy committees, followed by August 14th, which is the last day for the fiscal committees, anything with a cost to it, a piece of policy with a cost to it. Um, Education and labor related measures. August 21st is the last day to amend these bills for the floor. And then after that, the governor has until September 30th to either sign or veto the legislation. So for fact, the next few months really remain active. We're monitoring both the budget, implementation, trailer bill language, and then continuing advocacy on our sponsored bills, which we will get into right now. So our first, as we've been mentioning, well, the paid pregnancy, what we've been mentioning is the budget piece of it. And so this is the policy that came out, AB 65 by Majority Leader Aguilar Curry, the paid pregnancy leave for community college employees. This is FACCCC co-sponsored legislation. CTA, CDFT are also on there, as well as the Office of Fiona Ma provides up to 14 weeks of paid pregnancy disability leave for K-12 and community colleges. I agree with you, Cynthia. Disability should not be in there, but I think the disability is just should not be in the title. It's just part of the code that they use. But anyways, this bill covers pregnancy, miscarriages, childbirths, and recovery from any of those conditions. So the current system often forces educators to exhaust their sick leave, which is a huge problem. Then it would move into reduced differential pay. So that creates real financial instability, not only for the employees, but for those who need their support. AB 65 would change that by ensuring that eligible employees have access to paid pregnancy disability leave while maintaining health coverage. FAC has been long at this a long time. This is a faculty workforce issue. It's a retention issue. It's a recruitment issue. And it always comes down to the students too. We're always trying to be there for the students. And if folks need to go on leave and still be paid for it, then they need to be able to provide that for the educators. I did mention that this passed Senate Education with a 5-0 vote. And so now it moves to Senate Labor, Public Employment and Retirement Committee. It was a double referred bill. We don't think there should be any question or concerns. Still, questions might come up. How's it going to be paid for? Everything that we're trying to figure out here in the trailer bill language as well. Our next piece of sponsored legislation is AB 1171 by Assemblymember Dr. Patel, which is to strengthen the part-time community college faculty health insurance program. So California has invested $200 million annually in this program, but access to part-time faculty health care remains uneven across districts. And so our first iteration of this bill was just try to get districts to participate. But now we've moved into a better workable version that expands the access for qualifying part-time and multi-district part-time faculty. And it creates a dedicated fund so that 200 million that's unused every year won't get swept back to the general fund for other community college purposes. It will stay there in a part-time faculty healthcare fund and continue to grow. I think another major piece of this provision is it is the intent for districts to be negotiated by 2030. So AB 1171 passed Senate Education also with a 7-0 vote. And is now headed to Senate Appropriations. I think when you see these unanimous votes, these are the legislature trying to tell us really like, hey, we all agree on this. This is really important for us to make sure that whether they're programs like this, they get funded, but they're really trying to look out for faculty and students in the community colleges. So again, we need to strengthen this program and ensure that the state dollars are intended for the use that they were earmarked for. So we do have a couple opposition bills and concerns. I'm actually going to start on the right here with SB 1262, the Archuleta District Reserve Cap Bill. A second iteration of this bill, which would prohibit community college districts from exceeding a 50% unrestricted general fund, or what we call a reserve cap. And so this bill died in Senate Appropriations, and what the consultant had informed us on was that um, this would not have been a good, it would risk normalizing excessive reserves and does not guarantee dollars reach instruction or faculty. One that's active right now and moving is AB 2121 Berman. And unfortunately, it attempts to backfill federal grants, but in doing so would weaken the 50% law. FACC is obviously staunch supporters of the 50% law. We try to identify budget pathways for backfills to happen again. We got feedback back that California doesn't like to backfill federal grants that are lost because it would weaken our lawsuit power to the feds, which we have quite a few lawsuits to the feds these days. So it does have an urgency clause as well as a sunset, so it's very hard for legislators to go against this. In Senate Education, most of the members were saying, "Hey, if this benefits our students, why are we going to oppose something like this?" And FACC's argument isn't about not supporting the students or supporting the students. It's really about that 50% law exclusion and how that could create a pathway for other measures to do the exact same thing. We're continually working with the author and doing our due diligence on advocacy, trying to get this bill held. So be on the lookout in our weeklies for any call to action opportunities that we could all tap on you for. Again, this is like a major theme in the policy space. And so collectively, these bills, as a part of a broader legislative push to expand baccalaureate degrees at the community colleges. So FACC supports all three of these bills. It's up to the legislature to whether pass each individually or kind of pick and choose from each to create a package to send the message that they are also in support of baccalaureate degrees at the community college levels. You'll see across these three, these are very hyper specific. So whether it might be a regional kind of approach they're trying to do or a workforce need, we think this is good to increase regional access for affordable baccalaureate degrees.
And that's it on the legislative side. I did want to do a quick plug. We just finished up California Great Teachers Seminar in San Diego. If you were there, you know it was amazing. It was magical. FACC does receive grants so that we can give scholarships to folks to attend, and that's been so incredible for the program. We also just did a mini GTS at Hartnell College, and if that's something you think your college would be interested in, please reach out. We'd love to bring this, even further. Monterey is coming up. We actually ended up getting over 100 applications for the scholarships, and we don't have that many spaces. However, if you want to come and we do accept paid registration. So this is happening on Thursday, August 9th to 13th in Monterey. Please join us. We'd love to have you. And then beyond that, we really appreciate each and every one of you coming. I know Wednesday night is a weird time to do this. We've just enjoy having this conversation and being able to share this all with you. We do anticipate having another webinar towards the end of the summer, once the bills are wrapping up, once our budget bill, juniors, and trailer bills, and whatever else they want to throw us is wrapping up as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and keep an eye on your inbox for more updates, and have a great summer.